Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Present, Jens, and others, about a month later at the cabin. The TSIF's command center phone rings. James answers it, and after a brief pause to hear who is calling announces, "Jennifer, it's Linus for you." My heart beats slightly faster as I rush over, answer the phone, and query, "Linus, please tell me you have good news for a change?" Linus sounds almost as dejected as I am when he answers, "Sorry, Jennifer. The faint trail there had been of Ben has gone totally cold. I have a little hope that one of our new plans might work when I ask, Linus, is there anything else that you need to help in your search?" I then add one of our new ideas. How about a helicopter? Linus shoots down the idea just like Ben had shot down the Greenies' helicopters when he says, "Sorry, Jennifer, but even that won't help. We already have men stationed every 10 miles on the Continental Divide Trail for the next 100 miles, and somehow he avoids all of them." I slam the phone down in anger and dejection. Tom comes over and advises, "Jennifer, don't get your panties in a bunch. Stacy isn't having any better luck than we are, and she's using a satellite." I lie just to tease Tom. I can't get my panties in a bunch because I'm not wearing any. Tom gives me a dirty look, but immediately counters, "Prove it." Inga laughs and interjects, "I am not wearing any panties either and would love to prove it." Tom just as immediately backpedals, "No thank you, Inga." I laugh, then snap my fingers as I get a new idea and ask James, "James, tell me, do we have access to satellite communications?" James turns in his chair and answers, "Of course we do, Jennifer. Why are you wondering?" I rush over beside James, grab a chair, sit down and answer, "Tom reminded me of Stacy's satellite, and I'm betting I can hack into it, and we can use it." Tom again says, "Jennifer, what good will that do? I told you that they can't find Ben with her satellite." I laugh and answer, "Oh, I'm not going to try to find Ben with it. I have other plans." I begin the hack into Stacy's satellite network as I fight back the tears about all that has happened this month. First, Maria and Liz took me into the medical plane where they did a scan on me and found a GPS transponder that Mike hid inside me. We removed it, attached it to one of the Marines' truck as they left to go home after telling them about it, and hoped like hell Mike would follow them. We next had a huge funeral for Byron. He will be greatly missed. However, Tom now has a new right-hand man, or should I say woman, Inga, and they tease each other relentlessly. Stacy returned, and we fought like cats and dogs about her construction companies. I finally had my fill of it and threw her and them off my property, then hired my own construction companies. It didn't take them long to fix the tunnel entrances, and once they did, I made Stacy remove the mobile homes she messed up my property with, and we moved into the tunnels. The contractors are making good progress on fixing up the cabin, and soon we can move back in. I have been busy when I'm not in the TSIF's command center designing the new security system for the cabin and the tunnels, and it won't have the problems the first one did. But what has me the most upset is we tried our best and failed at finding Ben. Sharik must sense how upset I am as he come over, puts his head in my lap, and I say, "Sorry, Sharik, I can't pet you right now because I need to get this finished first." He lets out a little whimper, and I promise, "Don't worry. If you're a good dog, I will take you for a run later today." He spins around a couple times in joy, and his antics, as usual, help to dispel my terrible mood. Present, Stacy, about a month later on the Continental Divide Trail. Wojciech begins to yowl, once again, and takes off running backwards down the Continental Divide Trail. I yell at him, "Where the hell are you going this time, you coward?" Patches and Bo's ears go back along their heads, and they both begin to paw the earth. I reach down, stroke Patches, and say, "Come on, girl. I know you're spooked, but don't fail me now." I couldn't count the number of times this has happened, even if I used both my hands and feet. I'm sure it has something to do with that woman who's helping Ben. If I ever see her again, I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just going to shoot her. Unfortunately, my attempts to calm Patches don't work this time, since she turns tail and takes off with Bo right behind her. I'm left holding on for dear life. I've had a hell of a terrible month. First was the problem with the Barney Fife sheriff. If you thought he was angry for Wojciech ripping the door off his truck, he was even more angry after he pissed off Patches. She picked him up by the collar of his coat and shook him like a dog shakes a rat. It took 3 lawyers to get me out of the mess that the 2 of them got me in, and by the time I did, Ben was long gone. I wasn't too worried because I thought finding Ben was going to be so easy using the satellite. However, while I was in Barney Fife's jail, Ben and his friend did something, and it stopped working. When I got out of jail, I went back to the cabin to talk with Bill to see what the hell was going on. We called in all the technicians we could, but they couldn't figure it out. While I was there, I got in daily fights over almost everything with Jennifer until she finally got pissed enough to throw all of us off her property. We were able to form a tentative peace with Barney Fife when we moved everyone into town, bought an abandoned warehouse, and set up our command center. It was then he informed us that he had made Ben a deputy sheriff. I had Bill look into it and discovered that Barney Fife and Ben were BFFs in high school, so everything fell into place. Now I was holding on to patches for dear life once again. Present, Jack, Masha, and Ivan, about a month later in the tunnels. I sit on the bed beside Masha and ask, "Honey, is there anything that I can get for you before I leave for work?" Masha frowns at me and complains, "Jack, you are being irrational by making me stay in bed." I return the frown with a smile, give her a kiss, pull away, stand up, and gently counter, "Masha, you know better than that. I'm just enforcing the doctor's orders that you need total bed rest." She gives me the look that only a wife can give a husband after they have been married for many years. The look that says that I can't expect any fun beginning now and continuing for a while. Then she replies, "Jack, since when do you listen to the doctors?" I grin at her and answer, "I've become a much better listener when it concerns my wife and our unborn baby daughter." I turn to Ivan and order, "Ivan, since I have to go to work, I expect you to make sure Mama stays in bed." Ivan jumps to his feet, smartly salutes me, and responds, "Yes, sir." "Captain, sir." I once again complain, "Ivan, you know I'm not a sir, I work for a living. So how about you cut it out?" He salutes again and counters, "Sorry, sir. Uncle Ben teach me and give me orders that I should always call you sir and captain." I silently swear to myself that I will find some way to get even with Ben for teaching Ivan this nasty little trick. But first we have to find the sneaky scumsucker, which has proven harder than hell. I wonder if we will have any luck today as I head outside to greet my men as they do PT and hope for good news later when I go to the TSIF's command trailer. I get outside, find my men are missing, and there's a huge hullabaloo. Present, Samantha, about a month later working on news stories at the cabin. I am shocked when I see two men walking towards me. They both look like Rob Roy because they are wearing kilts, have on blue face paint, and have big swords and scabbards behind their backs. This has to be some sort of crazy news story. Now to figure out what the hell it is. I walk toward them, vaguely recognize one of them in spite of the face paint and kilts and ask, "Is that you, retired General Donaldson?" His reply is in such a thick Scottish brogue that I can hardly understand it. "Ye be already fair lassie, I be General Donaldson. Micht ye ken where my Dr. Jennifer be located?" I pointed to the TSIF's trailer and answer, "I think she is in there. Would you mind if I come along and ask you some questions?" Many of the Marines who are still here began to gather around as the newly defined General Donaldson answers. Present, General Donaldson, Hammer, and Samantha, about a month later at the cabin. Some Bonnie, as a bug news reporter, asks if she can come why me and ask me some questions while I fin my Dr. Jennifer and I answer, "Certainly ye can come why us. However, I'm Mick nay want ye reporting things when I reach my doctor." Air first question is a GUID in body when she asks, "General Donaldson, you have been missing now for over a month. What happened, and where have you been?" I hink for a moment on who much I wish to reveal an answer. I was captured by teach drug lord's men until my GUID mucker Hammer Whore rescued me. My GUID mucker Hammer interjects, "I saw those scumsuckers talking to General and Kent a hud te day something. It took 2 weeks te fin him and a body week te free him." Bonnie reporter asks, "General, why the change in clothing?" You are at SIF's trailer and I answer, "Hammer has shown me its GUID te embrace my Scottish heritage. No, oh please excuse us, we would lock OT gab te my doctor." Bonnie reporter smiles at me and answers, "Of course, but I would like a chance later for a longer interview." I nod my head in affirmation. We open teach door, step any teach SIF's trailer and Hammer says, "I woods lock te at Bonnie reporter a horizontal interview." I glore at Heman and see my doctor. While this has been one crazy month, I have been so busy trying to keep up with all the news that I feel like I've done a terrible job reporting on it. But the station, Liz, and most importantly the viewers have really shown their support. First, I did quite a few reports on Stacy's problems with the local sheriff. OMG, he was ready to lock her up and throw away the key until most of America started to give him hell about the way he treated her. I even got him to call off the search and kill parties going after Wojciech by finding Stacy and Wojciech after the sheriff released Stacy and doing a report with both of them. Stacy informed America of how Wojciech helped to battle the Mexicans as they tried to destroy Bob's country bunker, and he instantly became America's pet. Heck, there was even a line of Wojciech teddy bears which the children started to sleep with, thanks to Stacy's marketing company. The protesters came from all over America and called themselves the Occupy Wojciech protesters. They camped out in front of the sheriff's office and somehow, I think it was Stacy, found out where he lived and even harassed him and his family there. At first, he tried to be tough with them by arresting them, but it just caused more of them to come until his jail was full. Then he was forced to release them. I did a bunch of reports on what Mike had done to Jennifer and the rest of the people here at the cabin, how he had his surgeons place a bomb inside of Jennifer and left bombs which injured Masha's husband Jack and killed Byron. OMG, the funeral of Byron was one of the hardest reports I had ever done. I was shocked when I did his background and discovered he was a certified American hero. That report infuriated most of America, and from what I understand, there are more than a few teams out hunting for Mike. I can't wait to do a report on General Donaldson. Present, Tom and Inga, about a month later in the TSIF's command center. Hammer walks into the TSIF's command center trailer, and I have to blink my eyes multiple times because there's someone with him. They both look like twin Rob Roys. Jennifer's dog, who she calls Sharik after some damn fictional Russian, dog begins to woof softly. Jennifer turns to see what's going on, jumps the hell up from her chair, runs toward the older Rob Roy impersonator and yells, "Daddy." WTF. The old impersonator is Glenn. Hell, you could have fooled me. Inga comes over beside me, leans over and whispers, "Tom, if that is General Donaldson, he shouldn't have access to the TSIF's assets until he explains where he's been for the past month." She is right, but how in the hell do I broach this subject? Then I get a great idea. Since Inga wants to take Byron's place as my second-in-command, she can do the duties. I smile and concur. Inga, you are correct. Since you want to be my second-in-command, please ask him to leave the command center until he can be vetted. Inga walks over to where Jennifer and Glenn are having a happy reunion, which she interrupts. I cannot believe the task Tom just assigned me. However, I should be used to it by now since he has been giving me every terrible job he could think of since I have started acting as his second-in-command. What he doesn't realize is the harder he tries to make me quit, the more determined I become to not quit. I interrupt Jennifer and her father. Please excuse me, but it is a serious security breach for retired General Donaldson to be inside the TSIF's command center. We need to verify that he hasn't been brainwashed before we can give him access to the command center. As they separate, I can tell I've hurt Jennifer from the anger I recognize in her eyes, but then retired General Donaldson says, with a heavy Scottish accent, "Jennifer Denny G. Ragstorich, Bonnie Hen is correct. We need Tay-Tak, Thes Homecoming Oatwith." I was thankful that the former general responded so favorably. I moved back to Tom, and he questions, "So when are you going to vet him?" I answer, "As soon as he and Jennifer have a chance to say hello to each other." Tom then orders, "You need to contact Jack, let him know Glenn is back, and have him put a guard detail on Glenn until you can vet him." I grin at Tom and reply, "Yes, sir. I will do that immediately, sir." Then I quickly leave before Tom can complain about being called sir. If he wants to act like an officer, then I will begin to treat him like one. Present, Todd, Mira, and Alexei, about a month later at the cabin. What a month we have had. The police tried to arrest us because of Myra's indiscretions with the first officer who stopped her, but once again their diplomatic passports got them off scot-free. The police, however, were ready to haul me in, which made Irina very upset to the point of kicking their butts until I had them contact an old friend of mine. Shortly after the call, they were more than apologetic to me. Their actions piqued Irina's interest in me to a greater degree than ever. Yes, I realized she had some feelings. No, that's not right. She had fallen in love with me. The problem was after what happened on the island, I promised myself I would never become emotionally entangled with another woman. I found out why Alexei was so concerned about things breaking in his bag, and it was funny as hell. The scumsucker Mike was going to have a hell of a time paying for all the shit Alexei stole from the Broadmoor. He must have had 20 ashtrays, 6 TV remotes, more than 10 glasses, a shitload of swim goggles, new in the box, about 100 keychains that were sold in the gift shop, for laptop computers, and what had to be 5 complete resupplies for the room's minibar. He was a serious kleptomaniac, and I made sure to lock up everything I owned whenever I wasn't watching it. Oh yeah, we had appropriated our own trailer which we shared with Elizabeth Morgan and her fiancé Bernie. I also discovered Liz and Bernie were the twins, and by adoption, Alexei's main job. They were her bodyguards. The twins fought all the time. Miranda wanted to complete some mission that she had started, but with Irina's feelings toward me, she wanted to stay here. I avoided them as much as possible by teaching Alexei the fine art of the bow, which is what we are doing now. Alexei draws the bow but takes too much time in aiming, so I poke him in the side with an arrow which caused him to jump. He let the arrow fly, and of course it completely misses the target. He looks at me and complains, "Todd, why did you do that? Now I have lost my arrow, and it's going to take me an hour to find it." I smile at Alexei and sign, "Alexei, you made many mistakes. You held the bow drawn for too long, and then you let me distract you." Alexei challenges, "Oh yeah, I would like to see you do better." I surprise the hell out of him when I quickly knock an arrow, draw my bow, and drill the target square in the middle. Alexei continues his complaints. "Hey, that wasn't fair because I didn't get a chance to distract you." I get ready to sign and tell him all is fair in love and war when I quickly duck as an arrow flies between us, and Robin Hood's my arrow. Means when you split an arrow with another arrow. We both turn, and I see a girl I have never seen before, standing beside Miranda holding a laminated yumi, a Japanese bow traditionally made of bamboo, wood, and leather which are very tall, many times over 2 meters in length. The bamboo in the traditional yumi is vulnerable to weather changes, so many practitioners also have newer laminated yumis, and smiling. She curtsies and announces, "My name is Safia, and that is Seisha Saishu." I sure as hell understand Seisha Saishu from my time with Liu. It means correct shooting is correct hitting, but I hate the fact she fired the arrow between us, so I decide to show her who is boss. I quickly knock another arrow, fire, and promptly Robin Hood her arrow. Then I turn and sign in JSL. "You have offended me with your dangerous shot, which could have struck Alexei or myself. So that was not Seisha Saishu, however my shot was." Miranda states, "Todd, I did not comprehend your ASL. Please repeat." Shit. I forgot that Miranda probably doesn't know JSL, so I sign in ASL, spelling out the Japanese word in letters. "You have offended me with your dangerous shot, which could have struck Alexei or myself. So that was not Seisha Saishu, however my shot was." Miranda translates and Safia bows and apologizes, "Sensei, I am sorry I offended you and bow to your wisdom and superior skills." I sign, "I am not a sensei." She looks puzzled, so Miranda informs and translates. Safia, Todd is unable to speak, so he signed that he is not a sensei. Then Miranda smiles at me. I elucidate for Todd. Please forgive Safia as she cannot yet comprehend sign language and has just arrived from Japan to assist us. She is still young and was excitedly demonstrating her Yumi skills. Todd is obviously not appeased when he angrily signs. That was not demonstrating, that was showing off. Then he turns to Alexei and signs, "Today's lesson is finished." He then storms away. Alexei walks over displaying a superior attitude and questions. I find this girl standing beside Mira to be interesting because of the way she is clothed. She is wearing what appears to be a cross between a samurai outfit and anime. In addition, the bow she is carrying appears much taller than she is. I realize that Todd was upset by her behavior, but I am not sure it was strictly because she fired between us. I think he was perturbed that she ruined one of his arrows. Todd has this thing about his arrows. I remember when he first started training me, I was using his bow and his arrows, and I fired one arrow over the target like today. He made me search all day until I found it. I walk up in front of them and state, "Since you were using old equipment like that, you were fortunate to even hit the target." Mira glares at me and demands, "Alexei, why are you attempting to insult Safia?" I grin at Mira and reply, "I am not attempting to insult Safia. I am stating an obvious fact. My compound bow is infinitely superior to her wooden abomination." Safia smiles at me and counters, "If you feel your mechanical abortion is better than my quasi-traditional Yumi, then I would suggest we have a contest. I accept with a condition, gladly, but only if we make it more interesting with a wager." Safia questions, "What should we bet?" I rub my hands together at the thought of what I will win and answer, "How about breakfast in bed for a week?" Safia laughs and taunts, "You are not very sure of yourself. Would it be better if we make it for a month?" She holds out her hand in anticipation. I shake her hand and answer, "You're on." Present, Zarika and Yasmin, about a month later. So many things had occurred over the past month. Yasmin really came to our rescue. From the information Ms. Hornyhog accidentally gave her, she figured out my plan to contact the man at the 7 to 11 store. Then amazingly she contacted him, described to him where we were and told him about Mira, the twin, and having diplomatic passports. He contacted Mira, who came to the juvenile detention center with our diplomatic passports, and we were instantly released. However, I was shocked when I saw Yasmin. She had not done any exercises while we were detained and had become a little fat. We were quickly rushed back to the cabin and discovered it had been totally destroyed by the Jennifer bitch that Ben loved. Oh, that reminds me. Ben was here, but unfortunately we just missed seeing him. I have taken over helping with the cabin and continue to do my exercises. I refuse to become fat for my Ben. The Jennifer bitch is finally well enough to join me in the morning along with some of the other Marines, and I can tell she's impressed with me. And Yasmin, well, she's not here right now. I have had a great month after getting out of the terrible detention place. I went to the cabin for a short time, however Zarika kept bothering me because I gained some weight. However, I think she is just jealous because my body is developing wonderfully. So I left the cabin and came to Denver to pursue my recording career. Life is great. I get to sleep in all day, go to parties with my many new friends, and then work some at night. Yes, life is good when you are a rap star. Flashback, Ben, about a month later on his Chechen mission. I've had a hell of a good month, so I suppose I should fill you in on most of it. Let's see, where did I leave off? Yes, I remember. Before I left on my mission, Oksana came into my room at their house and once again offered me sex, but because of my loyalty to the liar Tatiana, I refused. We then had a long discussion, and I shockingly discovered that she was working as a hooker to pay for the upkeep of the house. I didn't like this one bit. She was too wonderful a girl to be forced to humiliate herself in that manner. So I fixed it. After I left, I called Yuri and had him create a new special retirement annuity for Oleg that would more than cover any repairs to the house. Hell, I even had Yuri configure it so Oksana would continue to receive the money after Oleg's impending demise. Yuri asked me why I was doing this, so I pulled rank on him and told him captains don't have to tell sergeants jack shit and hung up the phone. Oleg. He did a hell of a great job on the PTRD trigger and even helped me sight it in. It was a hell of a rifle, and I never did push the maximum range of the 14.5 round. But I did shoot rings around Oleg's sight in shots. The information Yuri gave me on location of the Chechen scumsuckers was spot on. Plus, he kept updating the locations when I would call him, which was almost daily. But most importantly, my mission was going great. I had successfully eliminated all the Chechen scumsuckers in this direction from Moscow, with the PTRD being an integral part of the mission. It was great to reach out and touch them from a couple thousand meters away. Now it was time to head back in the opposite direction and take care of the Chechen scumsuckers that were there. But first I decided to stop back by the village and see how Oleg, Oksana, and the rest of my friends were doing. The real reason for the visit was that I was tired of eating the excellent officer rations and had finished off the entire case of homemade vodka Oleg gave me. Hey, it was used medicinally, so don't give me shit. So I looked forward to a refill of the vodka and one of Oksana's great home-cooked meals. I pulled up in front of their house, opened the door, began to step out when a very excited Oksana ran out of the house. She flashed me $1 million smile and said, "Comrade Captain, you have returned." I stretched my sore as hell back, smiled back at Oksana, and answered, "Of course I did. I told you I would when I left. How are you and Oleg?" I saw a few tears in her eyes when she answered, "Comrade Captain, I am sorry to report, passed a week after you left." I shook my head and silently cursed myself for not leaving them my mobile phone number and replied, "Damn, I wish I could have been here for the funeral." Oksana amazingly smiled, wiped away the tears and answered, "But Comrade Captain, you gave a better gift. You allowed him to help you with the PTRD. He was so happy the whole week that all he talked about was you, and we prayed every night for you and your mission." I replied, "Well, your prayers were answered because my mission so far has been picture perfect." Oksana then asked, "Comrade Captain, was it you who found the extra retirement money for?" I gave her my best "I don't know what the hell you're talking about" look and lied. "Oksana, I have no idea what you were talking about." She glared at me, defiantly put her hands on her hips, and declared, "Comrade Captain, you are a terrible liar." Then she blushed and continued, "Because of the extra money, which even continues after my has passed, I no longer have to work at my previous occupation as I had to before." I held up both hands in submission and said, "Oksana, you're right that I made some calls. So what are your plans now that Oleg has passed? Are you going to head back to Moscow?" She blushed again and immediately answered, "No, Comrade Captain, was right. This is a wonderful place to live, and thanks to you, I will never have to go back to that rat race in Moscow. In fact, Comrade Captain, I should scold you for not being more observant." She held out her right hand. Wedding and engagement rings are worn on the right hand in Russia, and I observed a moderately sized engagement ring. I smiled and confessed, "You are correct. I didn't notice your engagement ring. Congratulations. Who is the lucky man?" She enthusiastically answered, "He is my old childhood friend. I hadn't seen him since I came back until one day he showed up after past and told me he'd always wanted to work in the quarry." I continued my interrogation. "Well, what's his name, and can I meet him before I leave?" Oksana giggled like a little girl and replied, "His name is Ivan Grigorovich, and if you will stay for dinner tonight, you can meet him." I rubbed my hands together in anticipation and said, "I would love a home-cooked meal tonight and to meet your fiancé. Now if I could use your spare room and shower, I would appreciate it." She giggled and answered, "Of course, Comrade Captain. You very much need a shower, and would you like for me to wash your uniform while you shower?" I sniffed my uniform and asked, "Is it that bad?" She plugged her nose, giggled, and answered, "Yes, very much so. Just leave it outside the bathroom, and I will take care of washing it." I blushed a little as I asked, "Oksana, I hate to impose, but could you also wash my other uniforms, socks and underwear?" She faked embarrassment and answered, "Comrade Captain, we hardly know each other. However, you are like the older brother I never had, so I will do it just this one time." She sure as hell didn't know what she was getting herself into because I had almost a month worth of dirty clothes to wash. I did my best to wash them in between killing the Chechens and tried to dry them in the back of but it sure as hell wasn't the clean I liked. I grabbed my huge dirty clothes bag, my necessary bag, and my dress uniform, while Oksana took my arm as we headed into the house. She looked at the huge dirty clothes bag. Her eyes about bulged out of her head, and she asked, "Are those all your dirty clothes?" I laughed and answered, "Nope, the clothes I have on are dirty too." I saw a twinkle in her eye which let me know her complaint was really a tease, and she said, "Comrade Captain, how long do you plan on staying? It will take me all night to wash that many clothes." I laughed and answered, "Hey, you're the one who offered to wash my dirty clothes. If it's too difficult for you, let me know where your machine is, and I will gladly wash them all at once." I knew that would get her goat, and she seriously complained, "There is no way I'm going to let you close to my washing machine. You would probably try to wash everything at once and break it." Being with her was different this time because she was different. Gone was the sexual tension and constant worry about her wanting to rope me into having sex. Yeah, it did feel more like she was my little sister, not a. Well, it's not nice to call little sisters those names even if that's what they used to do. I luxuriated in the hot shower, scrubbed the hell out of myself when I heard a knock at the door, and Oksana asked, "Comrade Captain, perhaps you would like a banya, Russian steam room after dinner?" Hell's bells. That would be great because I loved banya, Russian steam rooms. I yelled back, "Do fish swim, do birds fly?" Oksana questioned, "Comrade Captain, I do not understand your sayings." Shit, I forgot those sayings aren't Russian, but I fixed the mistake when I replied, "Oksana, that would be wonderful. However, if you are coming, I don't have a swimsuit." She giggled and answered, "Comrade Captain, of course I will come, and do not worry. We have extra swimming suits." Because of the impending banya, Russian steam room, I cut my shower short. I knew I would need another shower after I sweat my butt off in the banya, Russian steam room. Dressed in my last pair of clean underwear and started to get into my dress uniform. It was the only damn uniform I had which was still clean, and swore someone it didn't fit me right. Hell, even though I had been eating most of the officers' rations each day, I had lost some weight, and this bothered the hell out of me. Flashback, Tatiana, about a month later in Moscow. I had hoped that during the week I had off work to find Ben, we would easily find him. However, that was not be. At first I was depressed because we didn't find him, but now it is 3 weeks later and the team, even with a different leader, still could not find him. I was back at work, but work was not the same because instead of being Ben's personal nurse, I was back to being a normal floor nurse. And it was worse than before because the other nurses resented me and I was given the worst patients. It made me realize two things. First, how lucky I was when I was Ben's personal nurse, and second, how much I loved and missed him. I almost forgot to mention with my preoccupation about Ben, Jack and Masha's wedding was next week. Flashback, Masha, about a month later at Masha's flat. What an exciting month this had been. So many things have happened that it is hard to remember all of them. First, Tatiana finally remembered the details about the car, so my team was able to find one that was for sale and arranged, with the aid of some extra rubles for the driver to aid his memory, to purchase the vehicle. Jack and I went to his flat, and I was very impressed with Jack's negotiating skills. Even though he couldn't speak Russian and the man selling us the car couldn't speak English, we were able to purchase the car for $5,000. Jack was so proud that he bragged about his negotiating skills all the way back to the storage garage the team had found for the car. Of course, during the trip to the storage garage, we had to fight the typical Moscow traffic jam, and Jack now understood why I didn't drive my car. Jack still trained daily with the Spetsnaz, but had adapted well to the intense training and had lost all the weight he had gained, and even more. When he tried on his blue uniform for our wedding, he looked so very handsome in it. It was actually too large, so we took it to a tailor for alterations. I of course got up in the mornings to make him breakfast and kiss him goodbye. And thank God he wasn't so tired anymore at night, and we started having fun again. The major. Needless to say, my plan was working perfectly, and he was in major trouble. But the most important and incredible thing was, I was marrying Jack next week. Even though I was angry at Ben for going AWOL, unbeknownst to Jack or myself, he left an almost obscene amount of money with Tatiana for our wedding. In secret, she had planned the difficult parts like the location and reception hall. While she was off work for the 1 week, she searched for Ben. Then she finally included me, and we had fine-tuned the plan for the last 3 weeks. With Ben's lavish gift, we would have one of the finest weddings in Moscow. The only thing that spoiled it was Ben would not be here to be Jack's best man. Flashback, Jack, about a month later training with the Spetsnaz. Hell's bells. For the first week of taking Ben's place on the Spetsnaz team, I didn't know if I would survive. And if I did survive, I was going to figure out some way to kick Ben's, but if I ever saw him again. But now I actually looked forward to the days, other than all the running we did. The only thing that made running bearable were the Moscow citizens. They still stopped, made a path for us through the crowds, clapped and cheered, and gave us gifts as we passed. I could tell I had finally gained the respect of my Spetsnaz team. However, I still couldn't get any information about Ben from them, much to the dismay of Masha, and especially Tatiana. Speaking of Ben and Tatiana, Ben had left a shitload of money for Masha and my wedding, and Tatiana had taken care of all the hard parts of planning a wedding, according to my Masha. Tatiana was interminably sad because Ben was missing, and I felt guilty for giving her the shit I did and for my bad feelings toward her. Shit. I was getting married next week and looked forward to using the extra money Ben left for the car. I was able to get the damn car back for the same price Masha sold it to the man, to take us on a great honeymoon. With Yuri's help, we found this nice resort in Sochi where it was supposed to be warm. And thank God Masha's plan for the major was working perfectly, and that I was too busy with the Spetsnaz training for him to give me any shit. Flashback, Major M, about a month later at the hospital. Son of a bitch. Other than my nights with Victoria, this month was almost as bad as my time in Thule with the bony bitch, and I was even beginning to have problems with the nights with Victoria. I arrived later than hell at the hospital my second day in Moscow because Victoria and I had an ungodly amount of sex, and a Russian colonel had been waiting for me all day. He reamed me up one side and down the other, and directly blamed me for Sergeant Blaine going AWOL. I began to complain, then he pulled out several reports from Sergeant Blaine's file. The papers from his psychologist attested to the fact that he went AWOL primarily because of my return to Moscow. I tried to defend myself to no avail, and now the shrinks were on my butt to discover what I did to cause a former model soldier and hero of Russia to go AWOL. They subjected me to batteries of tests to determine if I was unsuitable for command. And the scumsuckers wouldn't even tell me how I was doing. The only good thing that happened was the impending wedding between Sergeant Reynolds and his bitch had distracted the old man, and I had been able to keep the news of Sergeant Blaine going AWOL from him. Ah yes, I was shocked by another kind of reality. I was having problems getting it up at night for Victoria. This had never happened before, and if I was in America, I would have gone to a doctor for some of the little blue pills, but there was no way in hell I was going to a doctor hear about that. I was sure somehow that would end up on my permanent medical information. Now I had another meeting with Sergeant Blaine's psychologist for more tests. Things were not looking good for me. Flashback, Glenn, about a month later at the home. For a month that started out foobar, it had ended up to be somewhere between okay and good. When we talked last time, Jennifer had been committed to the psychiatric ward of the hospital for self-injuring her back. The JA and I got to the hospital. We went in to comfort Jennifer, and she told us exactly what happened. We then checked her chart, and it told a completely different story. The long and short of it. After the JA did some investigation, he discovered a group of nurses and several doctors, including the shrink who committed Jennifer, were addicted to pain medication and were stealing doses from the patients. They would either change the times they were supposed to give the medications or only give the patients half a dose and take or save the other dose for themselves. The JA informed me that this was a common problem in the medical community, and instead of sending them all to Thule or locking them up, they were relieved of duty and placed in a drug rehabilitation program. Jennifer's chart was expunged, and she was released back to her original floor. Jennifer healed enough to be released from the hospital and went home with the bitch nurse Katie, a condition which Katie was regretting each and every day. When Jennifer wasn't in school, she was either practicing her ballet or making Katie's life a living hell. After 1 week, Katie called me and told me Jennifer could come home. I thought it sounded a little like begging, but Jennifer was so stubborn she refused to come home and continued to inflict hell upon Katie. The bitch deserved it as far as I was concerned. Hell, I was trying to figure out a way to make people live with the bitchy Jennifer instead of sending them to Thule. I put the fear of me into Robert and his parents, and so far he had behaved himself. Of course, I bought Jennifer help to make sure of that. I will let her tell you about what it was, because with all the women out of my house, it was time for a large pizza, several beers, and a couple of shots. Flashback, Jennifer, about a month later at the ballet school. I began to put on my tights for practice. Almost got them on and shoot. I forgot something again. I took them back off, put on the athletic cup that Daddy got me, made sure it was in the right place so that frickin' bear couldn't touch my privates, like Daddy explained to me, then began to put my tights back on. My back began to hurt again from all the movement, so I looked at the bottle of pills in my ballet bag and decided that one more today shouldn't be a problem. I took one with a sip of water from my bottle. I still remembered the first time frickin' bear performed a bicycle lift on me. His hand encountered the cup, and he was so surprised he dropped me, the first of many times, and then complained to Olga about it. Olga came over, felt my crotch without asking, which I didn't care for, and complained. But I held my ground and told her if she wanted a bicycle lift in this Swan Lake, I was going to wear the athletic cup. Of course, Olga called in Katie, and Katie tried, in her bovine excrement ways, to convince me to give in, so I retaliated by staging a hunger and no ballet strike. It took a whole week, in which I still practiced in the privacy of my own room. I guess I forgot to mention I made my room at Katie's house off limits to her by putting hasps and locks on the inside and outside of the doors. OMG, I also forgot to mention I took all my meals to my room, ate them there, and left the plates. When I was finished with this room, it was going to be a toxic waste dump. Katie tried to wiggle out of the agreement for me staying at her house after 1 week, but I was having too much fun and I refused to cancel the agreement. Let's see what else had I done in Katie's house. Well, I hacked into her computer and downloaded a bunch of really gross lesbian porn to it. I got a hold of her credit card numbers and had been subscribing to all the lesy magazines that I could. I even ordered gross sex toys delivered to her house. I then bought myself a great new laptop and had it delivered here. I used torrent clients to download and serve as many files as I could until her ISP threw a huge fit and threatened to shut down her connection. So I found a neighbor's open Wi-Fi connection and piggybacked her computer on that while it still served the torrents. Now it gave me back all the bandwidth the torrents had sucked, so I had better access. I almost forgot. I signed her up for quite a few dating sites with profiles that stated she just wanted to have sex with men, so she was getting emails and phone calls at all hours of the day. And when I wasn't in my room, I was in the bathroom running all the hot water faucets, so she never had hot water. There were bunches of other little things. Oh gee, I got sidetracked, and since I was telling you about Swan Frickin' Lake, let me get back to that. I kept my royal prima bitcherina attitude the whole time, was insulting, condescending, and a pitcher like I told Daddy I would be. Because of the lost week of practice, Ro Frickin' Bear did worse than ever. And it didn't help that every time he tried to do a lift on me, I didn't help, so he had to do all the work. You do know that ballerinas help on the lifts, didn't you? Ro Frickin' Bear tried to do a bicycle lift on me again, and I moved a little to throw off his balance. He couldn't hold the lift. I fell on top of him, making sure to elbow the heck out of his side, and complained, Olga, how in the heck am I supposed to dance when he is so incompetent? Ro Frickin' Bear couldn't talk because I knocked the wind out of him, and Olga came over and scolded him. Robert, you need to go to the gym more and lift weights. Jennifer is not a very large girl, and yet you still can't lift her correctly. Katie added her uninvited opinion. Olga, I feel that Robert is having problems with the lift because of Jennifer's insistence in wearing the athletic cup. I glared at Katie, stood up and bitched, that is it. I am finished dancing for today. Olga complained. But Jennifer, you need the practice if we are going to have the performance. I smiled at Olga, glared at Katie, and answered, Olga, you know that I can dance my parts perfectly. I am not the problem. Robert's continued incompetence is the problem. Until he can demonstrate a successful bicycle lift with Peggy, I refuse to continue to let him try on me. He drops me every time, and one of these times when he drops me I will be injured, and then I won't be able to dance. I chose Peggy because she was a huge, fat dancer, and even if she helped I doubted that Ro Frickin' Bear could hold her up on a bicycle lift. Olga tried to reason with me, but I sat down on the floor and pretended to cry. Katie came over to comfort me. She hugged me, and I exploded. Get your lesbian hands off of me, or I will call the police. She jumped away from me. She and Olga exchanged glances, and Olga called, Peggy, come over here and let Robert practice the bicycle lift with you. Peggy walked toward center stage. When she got close to me, she knelt down, hugged me, and whispered, Thank you, Jennifer. I can't wait for Robert to touch me there. Her comment practically made me throw up. Flashback, Alexei, about a month later at the laboratory. This has been an exciting month for me. My parents took me into the laboratory the next day where I told the psychiatrist about my mother hitting me with the rolled-up magazine. Mother tried to tell him I was acting like a dog, so she disciplined me like a dog. In response, I gave him my best. I couldn't believe what she said, look, and denounced everything. He believed me and pulled me out of my parents' house. At first, I was worried about how I would live, but things worked out great. I had my own room, had excellent food, and had the run of the laboratory all day and night. My parents stopped by every day to see how I was doing. But since I was in the laboratory and had more than I could ever want, I stopped acting like a dog. So while the psychologist allowed my parents to visit, he made it certain that I would stay at the laboratory for the time being. My parents did bring in my clothes and the cryptex, which I was now free to work on unencumbered. Flashback, Safia, about a month later flying to Japan. I successfully destroyed the old Mossad building like the twins wanted me to, even though I didn't understand it. I was thankful the building was empty, so the destruction didn't kill anyone. The twins weren't so lucky and didn't really care. They destroyed the new Mossad headquarters, which was filled with agents who died. I now had a deeper understanding of the twins, and I was not sure I liked what I discovered. However, with the deaths of the Mossad agents, things got really hot in Israel, so we were on a private flight to Japan, thanks to AITA. I was looking forward to my new life. However, I was still worried about the twins and how they so easily killed all those agents. Flashback, Todd, about a month later on the island. I had argued with Lou until I was blue in the face about leaving the island and having our baby someplace safe. She would have nothing to do with it, and the harder I argued, the harder she fought against me. I even moved out of the cave and into one of the buildings which I cleaned up. Lynn still stopped by every day, and we worked on my ASL and JSL, plus she gave me updates on Lou. After we made love, she held my hand and said, "Todd, do not worry. I should be able to deliver Lou's baby." I signed, "What if there are problems?" She smiled at me and said, "Todd, we will need to pray there are no problems." This was not the answer I wanted. There had to be a way to take Lou off the island, and I needed to find it. Flashback, Ben. About another 2 months later, the end of his Chechen mission and the return to Moscow. I loved it when a mission went mostly right, but I wish like hell it would have gone totally right. I killed almost all the scumsuckers other than the most important ringleaders. As much as I hate to admit it, they were smart as hell, and once they found out all the other scumsuckers that helped with Beslin were dead, they headed back to their godforsaken country and went into hiding. Oh, I could have gone in after them, but I was running low on supplies. Hell, it was my own fault since I knew I should have resupplied when I was in Moscow, but I needed to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. Shit, that reminded me. I told you how the mission was going, but I didn't tell you about anything else that happened for the past 2 months. Let's see, I left off on my trip to Oksana's house. Her fiancé, Ivan Gregorovich, showed up close to dinner time. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, and looked like a bodybuilder. I discreetly remarked about that during our time in the banya, Russian steam room. I said discreetly because I didn't want him to get the idea I was a homo. And Oksana laughed like crazy and informed me that he looked like a string bean until he started working at the quarry with Sergei. I was concerned at first that Ivan Gregorovich might have been after the annuity I had set up for Oksana, but he ended up being a great guy and really loved Oksana. Hell, he even helped her with the dishes after dinner like I had done on my earlier visit. This is almost unheard of for a Russian male. She asked me what I thought of him, and I told her she had love in a cottage, and not to mess it up. After the banya, Russian steam room, Ivan Gregorovich and I took a walk. I put the fear of God, and perhaps even more the fear of Ben, in him about ever hurting Oksana, and he assured me he loved her with his whole heart and felt lucky to have her as a fiancée. As I left, I felt good about the whole situation. No more than that. I wish someday to have a situation like this of my own. Ivan Gregorovich took over the still from Oleg and continued to make vodka. He gave me a case of it, and while it was good, it wasn't as good as Oleg's. Let's see, what else did I forget? This one will surprise the hell out of all of you, because I know it surprised the hell out of everyone else. Since I was headed the other direction from Moscow, it only made sense for me to make a surprise appearance at Jack and Masha's wedding to be the best man. Yeah, Yuri had the Spetsnaz team sneak me into the church. The look on Tatiana's face was priceless when I walked up beside her in the back of the church to escort her up to the front wearing my dress blues. She cried the whole time and tried to talk to me, but I shushed her and told her the wedding was more important. And what a wedding it was. I had never seen better. Jack looked better than I remembered in a very long time. I guess Yuri and the Spetsnaz training was good for him. I found out about the plan that Masha devised to keep me and Jack out of trouble with the brass. Major M was there, and I made sure to glare at him every time I looked at him. As soon as the wedding finished, the Spetsnaz team ran interference and I hightailed it out of there before I was captured and unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, didn't resupply because I didn't have time. I continued to lose weight, even though I ate like a horse. My strength was better than ever, my legs worked fine and I could run, again albeit a little slower than before, but most of the time my back hurt like a son of a bitch. I killed all the scumsuckers in the other direction from Moscow, other than the ringleaders who I mentioned earlier. Now it was time to head back to Moscow and see how much trouble I was in. I set up a meeting with Yuri and the Spetsnaz team so Yuri, the team, and Jack met me on the outskirts of Moscow in the early morning. Jack grinned at me, and I knew something was up, gave me a hell of a hug, stepped back, and I couldn't believe it when the old fart tried a leg sweep on me. I blocked it and demanded, "Jack, what the hell was that for? And you're still too slow to catch me with my guard down." Jack continued with the grin and answered, "Ben, that was for you taking the hell off and not telling me about it. I was trying to kick your butt." I laughed and taunted, "Jack, you may have trained with the Spetsnaz for the last 3 months, but you're still no match for me. However, I'm your huckleberry if you want to give it another try." Yuri distracted me when he came up and ordered, "Ben, we need all your uniforms and whatever equipment you have left." I glared at Yuri and replied, "Yuri, thanks for everything, but what the hell did you do to me? Everywhere I went, all the people thought I was a hero." Yuri laughed and answered, "Ben, we gave you the Order of Zhukov and First-Class Order of St. George, the highest and next highest awards in Russia. So tell me, did anyone bother you when they saw the medals?" I continued to glare at Yuri but had to admit, hell no, they were all polite. Even the officers I encountered treated me with respect. Yuri smiled, nodded his head, and answered, "Now, comrade, You know why we did that. I countered, I should still kick your butt for it. Jack tried to calm me down by changing the subject. Ben, don't you want to know how much trouble you're in? I turned my attention back to Jack and stated, it can't be that bad because you're still here. And I know the gist of the plan, but yeah, I would like to know how things went. Jack laughed like crazy, then began to brag on Masha's plan and the effect it was having on Major M. Flashback, Major M. About another 2 months later. I was thoroughly screwed. There was a slight reprieve in the old man finding out about Sergeant Blaine going AWOL, which was helped by the fact that the scumsucker showed up at Jack and his bitch's televised wedding. I tried in vain to catch Sergeant Blaine after the wedding, but the slippery son of a bitch was helped by the Spetsnaz team. He escaped through doors that went through all the icons in the front of the church. When I tried to follow him, some old-ass priest with a beard, which made him look like Methuselah, stopped me and yammered at me in Russian. I didn't bring Victoria with me, so I couldn't understand what he was saying. I went to grab him and move him aside when the Spetsnaz team came to his aid and stopped me. I complained like hell for them to get their hands off me, but they just laughed. I knew I lived on borrowed time, and then some scumsucker, or bitch because I was sure it was Sergeant Reynolds' wife, sent the old man all the information about Sergeant Blaine going AWOL, including the date it happened, and included all the psychological tests they did on me. The old man placed the blame squarely on my shoulders, in my opinion incorrectly, because I was sure it was some evil plot hatched by Sergeant Reynolds' bitch. Now I was headed back to the States to answer to the old man and to undergo more tests. I hated like hell leaving Victoria. Shit, she even cried when I left, but in one way it was good because lately I hadn't been able to get it up. I blamed this latest problem on all the stress the Sergeant Blaine had caused me. Someday, and some way I was going to make him pay. Flashback, Tatiana, about another 2 months later in Moscow. As Ben would say, life for me sucked. Yes, life was worse than ever. It was so bad I even contemplated suicide, and for a nurse suicide was easy. Only my Orthodox religion kept me from killing myself, because if I did kill myself, I would go to hell forever. First was the biggest surprise ever. Ben showed up to the wedding to be Jack's best man. He looked incredible other than he had lost some weight. I tried to talk to him to ask his forgiveness for being such a bitch, but he shushed me. Yes, I couldn't believe that he shushed me, and told me the wedding was more important. I cried during the whole wedding, so much that I ruined my makeup. I knew that Ben was very angry at me and possibly hated me because he wouldn't look at me. When he wasn't looking at Jack and Masha, he was giving the stupid Major the evil eye. I planned on talking to Ben after the wedding and doing anything and everything to get him to forgive me and take me back as his girlfriend, but I was distracted helping Masha because I was the maid of honor, with her beautiful wedding gown, and when I finished he was gone. Yes, my whole life sucked. Ben was still gone, my job was still terrible, and I, unlike Ben, had gained weight, probably from all the ice cream and chocolate I was eating. Flashback, Masha, about another 2 months later at Jack and Masha's flat. Life was so very wonderful for me. Married life was so much better than living single, and I now understood the happiness of my many married friends. To know that I would never again be alone because now I shared my life with my husband who was loving and caring and so very helpful. The wedding was like a dream for me. Ben even attended as Jack's best man, which I thought was a mistake because I was sure the Major would catch him. I wanted to thank him for the wonderful wedding, but when the time came for the reception line, he had already departed and Jack didn't even know when or where he went. The only sad part of the wedding was Tatiana's response to Ben being there. She cried and carried on like a little girl, which ruined her makeup. Her makeup was so bad another friend took her into the bathroom after Ben had left, cleaned her face, and helped her apply new makeup for the pictures after the wedding. Jack and I had a wonderful honeymoon in Sochi at a very exclusive resort. Jack used the rest of the money we didn't spend on buying back my car to pay for it. It seemed that we owed Ben's generosity for much of our happiness. I asked Jack how Ben was able to afford such lavish gifts, and Jack mumbled something about how Ben seemed to have more money than Carter had little pills, which I understood to mean that Jack didn't know any more than I did. My team continued the search for Ben without having any success. However, it appeared that his mission to kill all the Chechens associated with the Beslan incident was going well. Almost all of them were dead. With Victoria's excellent help, the Major was no longer a problem. However, I did need to reprimand her slightly for one incident with the Major. Sex with the Major was majorly revolting for her, and she reached a point where she could not stand it anymore. She therefore drugged his food and drink with enough estrogen to prevent him from obtaining an erection. My only continuing concern was Tatiana. She was becoming irrational. She was certain that she was the reason Ben left even after we gave her proof of the Chechens being killed. She would not listen and had stopped taking care of herself. Most days she looked and acted like a zombie. I was concerned she would do something stupid. Flashback, Jack. About another 2 months later meeting Ben. I began to tell Ben how well Masha's plan worked. Shit, Ben. Because of Masha's plan, I don't think we will ever have to worry about the major again. Ben shook his head and taunted. Jack, we all know how you feel Masha is supposedly perfect, but you didn't give me any information at all about the major or her plan. Does she have any way figured out for me to come back? I was offended and slightly bothered by Ben's attitude toward Masha, but I knew retribution was coming. I glared at him and answered, she sure as hell does, and your return right now is the perfect time. You see, the old man finally got wind of you going AWOL and recalled the major. Ben interrupted me. Great, so with Major Payne in the butt leaving, if I show back up at the hospital, they will assume it's because he was recalled, which further reinforces that he was the reason I left. I continued grinning at Ben because I knew what was coming, and I also knew he would extremely hate it, and answered, that's right, Sherlock. Now we just need to make it look like you lived on the streets for the last 3 months. Ben looked surprised and asked, what in the hell do you mean? Yuri laughed and added, Ben, we have to give them a plausible excuse of where you've been for the last 3 months that won't get the team or anyone else in trouble. So we have decided you were homeless and lived on the streets. Now take off your clothes and put on these. Yuri handed him some nasty scrubs that looked like hell and smelled like shit. Ben gave him a look that said, are you kidding me, and complained, what the hell are these and don't I have any say in this? Yuri looked at him and ordered, Sergeant Blaine, do not make me pull rank on you. This is your new uniform until you arrive at the hospital and are examined by the doctors. Now put them on and act like you have been homeless for the past 3 months. Ben began to take off his clothes. I noticed his weight loss and commented, well, you sure have the weight loss look of a homeless person nailed to AT. What happened? Didn't you like the officer rations the team gave you? I could tell that Ben fought retching as he put on the scrubs because he held his breath. He turned his head away from the nasty scrubs, took a deep breath, and answered, hell no, they were great, and I ate almost everything except for the nasty dried fish sticks and gelled pork that seemed to be in most of the officer rations. Something must be wrong with me because I still kept losing weight. I smiled at Ben and consoled, well, don't worry, the weight loss makes it look even more realistic. I glanced at Yuri and asked, should we add the finishing touch? Yuri and the rest of the team laughed, dumped a couple buckets of swill on Ben, and he swore. Flashback, Ben, about another 2 months later, the end of his Chechen mission and the return to Moscow. Son of a bitch. It was bad enough having to wear these nasty scrubs. Now Yuri and the team covered me in buckets filled with some sort of nasty slop. That was some of the worst smelling shit I had ever smelled. I complained, what the hell did you do that for? The scrubs are bad enough. I'm going to kick your butts. Then Yuri pulled rank on me. Sergeant Blaine, you will do no such thing. Now stop complaining like an officer. Wait for the ambulance to take you to the hospital and remember your story about being homeless on the streets of Moscow. The ambulance arrived and I gave them one last barb as the EMTs loaded me. Laugh all you want now, scumsuckers. But when I come back to training, I'm going to kick your butts so hard you'll have to use a dentist for a proctologist. Jack climbed in the ambulance with me, so I asked, Jack, what the hell are you doing? He answered, I get to be the hero this time for finding you. The EMTs sure weren't happy about hauling me to the hospital. I noticed they pulled out masks, put some liquid on them, and covered their faces. Jack motioned to them. They understood and made a mask for him. Thank God the ride to the hospital didn't take long because it was still early morning. We arrived at the hospital, and I had a hell of a surprise. Flashback, Tatiana, about another 2 months later in Moscow at the hospital. I was sitting in the hospital during my morning break, playing with some food from the cafeteria on my plate when an ER nurse walked by and taunted me. I guess you didn't hear, your American boyfriend is back in the hospital. I had been on the receiving end of taunts like this before, so I simply said, oh yeah, prove it to me. She grinned and answered, no problem. Then she pulled out her mobile phone, unlocked it, and showed me a picture of my Ben in the ER. He looked terrible. She continued being evil as she said, with the way he looks and the way you look, you two will make a perfect couple. I looked down at myself and realized she was correct. I looked terrible today. I didn't shower this morning, and my uniform was a huge mess from the patients I had been taking care of. She laughed as I jumped up from the table, but I thought, someday, bitch, you will get yours. I dashed to Central Laundry, acquired some clean scrubs to replace my soiled uniform, ran to the nurse's locker room, took a short but effective shower, making sure to wash my hair, put on the scrubs, and ran to the emergency room. I found the room that Ben was in, took a deep breath, and silently prayed that he would still love me. I went inside, pushed the other nurses out of the way, and stood beside his gurney. He saw me, gave me his special smile, and held out his arms. Even though he smelled terrible, I hugged him and gave him my biggest and best kiss. The doctor interrupted. Nurse, restrain yourself. I need to finish taking his medical history and then give him a physical. I pulled away and impatiently waited for the doctor to finish. Ben motioned with his head. I then noticed Jack in the corner of the room, so I moved over beside him and whispered, "So what is the plan?" Jack whispered, "We're telling everyone that Ben lived on the streets of Moscow for the past 3 months." I nodded and said, "Well, he sure looks the part." Jack chuckled. "Yeah, Yuri and the team did a great job. By the way, Ben is madder than a wet hen." I wasn't familiar with the phrase, but from Ben's expression and Jack's laughter, I figured he was upset. I silently hoped his current condition would distract him from his anger at me. I watched as the doctor finished taking Ben's medical history and conducted a very brief physical exam, probably due to the smell. Stepping back beside the gurney, I listened as the doctor finished up and instructed, "Take him to his room, get him cleaned up, and put him in fresh scrubs." I volunteered, "Doctor, I was his personal nurse and would be more than happy to give him a sponge bath." Ben looked at me and made me sad when he answered, "Sorry, but I can walk now, so I would prefer to take a shower." I asked Ben the question I had been dying to ask him and held my breath as I waited for the answer. "Ben, do you still want me for your personal nurse?" My heart did flip-flops when Ben smiled at me and answered, "Tatiana, I sure as hell wouldn't have it any other way." I smiled and said, "Ben, let me get you a wheelchair." He gave me a dirty look and I realized our relationship was going to be very different when he answered, "Tatiana, I can walk and I sure as hell don't need a wheelchair. But I sure would like some new scrubs and some food." I took his arm. We walked out of the ER together and I said, "First, Ben, we will get you to your room and into the shower. While you are showering, I will get you some new scrubs and also new blue booties for your feet." Then I questioned, "And are you sure you want hospital food?" Ben never got to answer because we were interrupted. Flashback, Ben, about another 2 months later, the end of his Chechen mission and the return to the Moscow hospital. Tatiana and I needed to have a talk about what she did right before I left. I found out from Jack, if the old scumsucker was correct, that she blamed her lie to me for me leaving, even after Masha showed her the results of my mission. I needed to set things straight with her, and we also needed to deal with the lie that she told me. I also realized she needed to unload on me for leaving the way I did. But first I wanted to get cleaned up. I was almost persuaded not to kick Yuri's butt, but after these scrubs and then throwing the nasty shit on me, I was pissed, and he was going to get the butt kicking he deserved. Tatiana asked me a question about the hospital food, which I prepared to answer, but as we walked out into the hallway I was shocked because it looked like all the press in Moscow blocked the hallway and waited to talk to me. They all started shouting questions at once, and I quickly looked for an escape route when I saw the stairway wasn't blocked. The last thing I wanted was to speak with the press, so I looked at Tatiana and ordered, "Make a run for it." I hit the door for the stairs with her right behind me. I started running up the stairs and Tatiana yelled, "Ben, you do not know where your room is." She was right. I didn't know which floor my room was on. I stopped. She ran past me on the stairs and teased, "See if you can catch me." I bounded after her, easily caught her, smacked her on the butt, and demanded, "I caught you. Now what is my reward?" She continued to run and answered, "That will have to wait until we get in your room." But what she didn't know is that was going to wait until we had talked about our problems. We hit a landing. Tatiana opened the door. I zipped past her into the hallway and stopped as fast as I could to keep from running over a Russian colonel. Tatiana didn't stop as fast, so she ran into me, which knocked me into the colonel, and we all ended up in a tangled mess on the floor. I thought my butt was grass until the colonel began to laugh and said, "Welcome back to the hospital, Sergeant Blaine. I am Colonel Maxim Gorky, and I am here to make sure your stay and continued rehabilitation is not interrupted as before." I jumped up, assisted the colonel, stood at attention, saluted, and apologized. "Forgive me, Colonel, for knocking you over. I was just, I couldn't think of an excuse." The colonel surprised me when he interrupted, "Sergeant, calm yourself. I am not like your major. I am here to be your friend and to make sure that everything at the hospital meets your standards." I couldn't believe it. An officer, a colonel no less, was concerned about how I was being treated at the hospital. I decided to call his bluff and asked, "Sorry, sir, but I find it hard to believe that an officer, especially a colonel, would be concerned with my impression of the hospital." He laughed and answered, "Well, Sergeant Blaine, the problems you had before you left reflected poorly on this hospital and the entire Soviet medical system. I am here to make sure you do not have any problems with your stay this time. Now, if you wouldn't mind, why don't we let Tatiana, your personal nurse, get you cleaned up and fed, and then seeing as you avoided the press below, I would like you to hold a press conference." I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but I figured I'd dodged a hell of a bullet. To run a colonel over, knock him on his butt, and have him laugh about it. Things were strange, and I needed to ask Tatiana about it. I saluted and answered, "Yes, sir. I would be glad to talk to the press, however, I am not sure I would like to eat the hospital food." The colonel gave me a smile and said, "Sergeant Blaine, I am afraid I must insist that you eat only the hospital food. He turned to Tatiana and ordered, Tatiana, your orders are to make sure that Sergeant Blaine does not receive any outside food from anyone, including yourself. I will talk with Sergeant Reynolds and the Spetsnaz team to make sure they do not bring him any outside food. Tatiana replied, Yes, Colonel. I became brave and asked, Excuse me, Colonel, permission to speak freely? He gave me his affirmation, so I continued, Sir, I am puzzled by the sudden change in how I am being treated. Sir, it doesn't make any sense to me, so if possible could you please explain? The Colonel smiled at me and explained, There is a simple answer for this, Sergeant Blaine. When you were in the hospital before, it became obvious that we, that is the hospital, let you down. Oh, you had the best doctors, and your personal nurse Tatiana is one of the best. However, there were several areas for which we failed to provide even adequate care. The two areas we identified that were the greatest failures were the quality of the food and adapting the physical therapy programs to your individual needs. We are concerned that our failures in those areas, combined with the arrival of your annoying major, forced you, a hero of Russia, to abandon the hospital. We want the world to see that our hospitals are on par with any hospitals in the world, so I have been tasked with making sure any and all problems you experience in the hospital are rectified. I nodded my head and continued, Do I still have permission to speak freely? He again gave me his assurance, so I continued, Sir, you make it sound as if the motivation behind this publicity? He laughed and answered, Sergeant, I would be lying if I said there wasn't some publicity involved. However, you being a guest in our hospital has given us a unique opportunity to evaluate our level of care compared to the care you have received in American hospitals. We, that is the Kremlin, feel this is an educational opportunity for us. Now, Sergeant, if you have no further questions, I would suggest we both get cleaned up. I noticed for the first time that when I bumped into the major, I got some of the slop that Yuri poured on me on his uniform, so I apologized. Sorry again, sir, for getting your uniform dirty. He laughed and said, Sergeant, do not worry. You will find that Russian officers operate differently than the American officers to which you've grown accustomed. I saluted him. He returned the salute, then turned and walked away. When he was out of earshot, I asked Tatiana, what do you know about this? She took my arm and answered, Flashback, Tatiana, about another 2 months later in Moscow at the hospital. It was so good being with Ben again, and thank God he had not noticed my weight gain. He asked me about what the Colonel had said, so I took his arm. We walked toward his room, and I answered, Ben, because you left, I have not been my normal observant self. Even though I have been working as a floor nurse in multiple rooms, I therefore haven't noticed many changes. Ben gave me a funny look and got ready to say something until we walked into his room. He stopped, looked around, grinned at me, and said, Damn, this is nicer than some of the hotel rooms I've stayed in. I was also amazed by the changes as Ben continued, Tatiana, please tell me if this is representative of the rooms you have been working in? I continued to observe the room, then I realized the truth of the matter, smiled at Ben, and answered, Yes, Ben. Now that you are back, I must say this room is similar to the rooms in which I've been working. I am sorry again that I didn't notice it before. I took Ben into the bathroom, thought for a few more moments, and gave additional information. I vaguely remember some news reports that inferred you left the hospital because it wasn't as good as the American hospitals you had been in. I was shocked as Ben began to close the bathroom door before he took off his dirty scrubs and questioned, Ben, there is no need to close the door because I was looking forward to seeing you again. Ben smiled at me and apologized. Sorry, Tatiana, but our relationship isn't the same as before I left. In fact, we need to have a long talk about the meal you brought me. I was shocked beyond belief. I did not expect our relationship to be the same, but I did expect more than this. I bit my lip to keep from crying and replied, Yes, Ben, I understand that you are still angry at me. Please understand I will do anything to ensure you will forgive me. I will leave you alone and get your clean clothes. I turned and left the room before I broke down in tears in front of Ben. Flashback, Glenn, about another 2 months later at the home. Jennifer's ordeal with Katie ended and mine had just started. Jennifer took a look at me today and complained, Daddy, what in the frackin' heck did you do to yourself while I was forced to stay at Katie's? I glared at her and lied. Young lady, I have no idea what you were talking about. Jennifer got on high horse and raced on with her complaints. Daddy, I don't know how much weight you gained for the 2 months I was gone, but I bet it's 20 pounds. Your uniforms look terrible on you since they no longer fit. I looked down and lamely countered. Jennifer, they look fine, and I sure as hell don't know what you're complaining about. And now that you're home, you need to cut out the bitchy attitude. Yet Jennifer was back and unfortunately had picked up some bad habits from staying at the bitch nurse Katie's house. Jennifer continued, Daddy, I am not bitchy. I just worry about how much weight you gained when I was gone. I smiled at her and answered with something I knew would piss her off, just to change the subject, you understand. don't you have ballet today? She gave me a dirty look and declared, Daddy, I thought with Mother still being in the hospital, I wouldn't have to attend ballet. I laughed and taunted, well, Swan Lake is over, but you know how watching it affected her. Jennifer looked down and answered. Flashback, Jennifer, about another 2 months later at the home. OMG, what a 2 months I'd had. Let's see, when I last talked to all of you, I was still practicing for Swan Lake. Now it was over. But not before Frickin' Bear had a huge nervous breakdown and ended up in the hospital because he couldn't dance his part correctly. Olga was going to cancel it. Yeah. But then frickin' Katie got the principal male ballet dancer from the NYCB to come and dance. The good news was, unlike Frickin' Bear, he was gay, so I didn't have to worry about his hands. Even better news was that he was a really good dancer, and we had a fantastic performance that went on for 5 nights. Mother was allowed to attend all the performances but had to return to the hospital each night. And Mother was different than she'd been before. She praised me like crazy and never voiced even one complaint. The bad news was she had decided, along with frickin' Olga and frackin' Katie, that I should be a ballerina full-time. The more I thought about it, the more I knew that I shouldn't have tried to dance my best. I should have just continued with my normal intentional mess-ups. However, I just couldn't do it with all those people watching me. I looked down and replied to Daddy, Daddy, I know it made her really happy to see how well I did. And I know her doctor told both of us we shouldn't do anything to stress her. Daddy interrupted. So Jennifer, tell me what will happen if you don't go to ballet school? I shook my head and dejectedly answered, frickin' Olga and frackin' Katie will tell Mother, and then Mother will ask me why I didn't go. I will be forced to lie to her, which will then add to her stress. So I guess I am forced again to go to ballet school. Then I came up with an idea, smiled and continued. But I also know that Mother will be stressed when she sees the weight you've gained, so if I have to go to ballet school, you need to go on a diet and start an exercise program. Flashback, Alexei, about another 2 months later at the laboratory. I had settled into a routine at the laboratory that was very enjoyable because I received much more love and attention from the staff than I did from my parents. Both Mother and Father still stopped by daily to visit, and of course they still performed their tests on me, but I had no interest in going back to their house. I call it their house because it certainly had never been a home for me. We had started family counseling sessions with the psychologist, which I despised, but endured. My newest game was to test the limits of the psychologist's patience. It produced a battle of wills that I found most exhilarating. Flashback, Safia, about another 2 months later in Japan. What an intense 2 months I had endured. We made it safely to Japan, but then all heck broke loose. The twins began to look for a sensei to train us, and were rejected by so many of them, they began to take it personally. We went to a new dojo, and they entered and obeyed all the crazy customs. The sensei walked toward them, approached closer than I would have dared, and hurled an insult. What are you geishas doing in my dojo? He turned to his class and announced, I think they are here to service us. Ira kept her head bowed as she answered, Excuse my corporeal self, sensei, but you are mistaken. We have come to study under your leadership. I knew Ira had chosen the incorrect words after she said them, since the sensei laughed and replied, The only studying fitting for you to do under me is to spread your legs and feel my manhood inside you. Ira looked at him and questioned, Excuse me, sensei, did you just insult me? He laughed and answered, No. You 3 street hookers have insulted me by defiling my dojo with your entrance. Ira slapped him across the face, and the fight was on. When it was all over, once again we had won the battle and lost the war. We walked outside of the dojo, and Mira lamented, It is a conundrum of the highest priority, since we cannot find a dojo to accept us. Ira added, Yes, this culture appears to be most backward in their treatment of women. I am at a loss for a method to ensure our training at a suitable dojo. Then I noticed a sign, pointed and answered, Girls, it is simple. We disguise ourselves as men, enter the tournament, and when we win it we will have our choice of dojos. Mira and Ira discussed the merits of my idea and finally decided they liked my plan. Flashback, Todd, about another 2 months later on the island. I knew that Lou must have had a way to contact people off the island. I determined this because the ships came for the women after we rescued them, and they had to be notified. Finally, my perseverance paid off, and I was able to follow Lou to a cave I had never seen. Perched above the cave, hidden in the tall trees, I saw an antenna. This had to be the place. I planned on contacting my people, telling them I was alive, and having them come and rescue all of us from this godforsaken island. I waited patiently until Lou left, then I waited an additional hour in case she looped back to try to catch me. Finally, I slowly and carefully slipped down to the cave, making sure to avoid the many traps which Lou had placed around the cave for protection. Yeah, since I had been on my own, I had really honed all my skills, not just in discovering Lou's many traps which covered most of the island, but also with the bow, katana, and woodcraft. Shit, I had to get better, otherwise I would have spent my whole time tangled in one of Lu's traps. I made it to the cave, slowly slipped inside, and found the radio and a bank of batteries. It was an old-as-hell radio. The top was off, and then I realized that it wouldn't work since more than half the tubes, hey, I did say it was an old radio, were missing. Yeah, once again Lu had outfoxed me. However, I still had another plan. Flashback, Todd. About another 6 months later on the island. The absolute worst had happened, and my practically idyllic life on this island had turned into shit. Lu went into labor early, and though Lynn and I tried like crazy to save her, we failed. Yes, Lu. Wonderful Lu. The woman that I should have grown old with died many years before her time because of her stubbornness. In the end, the only thing we could do was give Lu some medicinal plants to ease her pain and bury her. Lynn held me as I cried and questioned, Todd, what are your plans now? I pulled myself together and signed, Lynn, I am ready to leave this island. Lynn questioned, Todd, how are you planning on doing that? I signed, I need to find where Lu hid the tubes for the radio, then I can call my people and we can leave, together. Then Lynn dropped the hammer on me and made a bad situation even worse when she said, I am sorry, Todd, but I have grown to love this island and I have no plans of ever leaving. I signed a question, but what about us? She answered, Todd, someday you will realize what a special place this island is. Once you do, you will return, and until then I will wait patiently for you. We easily found the tubes for the radio in Lu and Lynn's cave. Because I couldn't talk, I had Lynn call my people and deliver a coded message. They were shocked I was still alive and sent a plane for me immediately. I told Lynn how to contact me if she ever changed her mind. I fought with Lynn about coming with me until the VTOL plane came, but she would not budge. I waved goodbye to her, and as the plane left she smiled and waved back. I wondered if I would ever see her again. Flashback, Mira, Ira, and Safia. About another 6 months later in Japan. We followed Safia's excellent idea of masquerading as men and entered the martial arts competition. While it was extremely difficult, Ira and I were able to win the competition. Then we revealed that we were actually women, but the men whom we had defeated did not look kindly upon the masquerade. They attacked in force, and we were forced to defeat them again. When we completed the trouncing of the men for a second time, we had lost hope of finding a dojo in which to be educated when a very old man who appeared to be blind and used a cane to locomotivate appeared. He approached, laughed, and stated, Young ladies, do not be surprised at the ignorance of my fellow countrymen. Our men seem to forget there have been many famous warriors who were women in our past. It is unfortunate for them because they cannot see that you too are indeed warriors. I questioned, Sir, you appear to be blind. How is it that you can oculate this situation? He continued in his jovial mood and answered, Like many you assume that eyes are essential for vision. Ira rashly inquired. I was slightly annoyed at this old man, so I questioned, Sir, isn't the definition of vision to use one's ocular units to observe? The old man turned toward me and verbalized, that is how the dictionary would define it. However, the dictionary definition is incomplete. I challenged, if the dictionary is incorrect, then describe what I am performing at this moment. I stuck my tongue out at him. He laughed and answered, Young girl, or perhaps I should address you as young snake, because snakes are renowned for sticking out their tongues. Safia laughed at his comment and asked, I liked this old man, and while I didn't think the twins realized it, I was sure he had come to offer to train us. I laughed and questioned, Sensei, why did you approach us? He laughed and replied, the youngest girl, who did not participate in the contests, is the first to recognize my mission. She might be the youngest. However, she might also be the wisest. Ira interrupted, Old man, do not insult me. If you were not blind, you would feel my wrath. He smiled in the direction of Ira and replied, it is the angry twin again. It is you who has insulted me by not letting me finish a sentence. And even blind, I do not fear your idle threats. I tried to stop her, but Ira was adrenalized from the conflicts with the men and threatened, Old man, I would hate to be forced to instruct your corporeal self in marital arts. He laughed and taunted, How can one so young teach a master? Ira lunged at the sensei, but he easily blocked her attack, and the next thing we knew, Ira sailed through the air and landed on her posterior. He turned toward Mira and inquired politely, Do you plan on assisting your sister? Mira folded her hands, bowed and answered, No, sensei, my sister was unwise to attack you. He returned the bow and questioned, What is your name, young woman? Mira replied, My name is Miranda. He turned back toward Ira and questioned, And what is your name, young angry girl? Ira glared at him, but answered, I am Irina. He finally asked, And the youngest and wisest girl, what is your name? I smiled and answered, My name is Safia sensei. He stroked his beard, appeared to think for several minutes, then said, My name is Quan, and I have decided to accept the three of you as my students if you are interested. I replied, It would be an honor for us, Sensei. Please take us to your dojo. Ira complained. Safia does not verbalize for the three of us. I am not certain you are a sensei. He laughed and answered, yes. This one's eyes give her sight, but she cannot see and requires proof. Follow me, and I will prove to you I am sensei. I reiterated, Sensei, where's your dojo? He laughed and answered, the world is my dojo. I discovered later that it was true. We wandered throughout Japan with Sensei, stayed in houses that gave us shelter, ate in houses which gave us food, and sometimes went hungry. However, we all grew to love him, including Ira, because he was an excellent sensei. Flashback, Alexei, about another 6 months later at the laboratory. The psychologist had finally resolved things with my parents, and today was a happy day for them and a different type of day for me. Yes, I was going back to their house to be their son again. I had relented because I had grown bored of living in the laboratory. Yes, at first it was fun, but then I realized that no one would take me anywhere in the evening because no one worked at night. I smiled and cherished the knowledge that I could begin the dog ruse anytime I wanted to move back into the laboratory. Plus, I had talked the psychologist into having my parents remove the most onerous of their annoying rules. I was to have my own computer and my own television in my room. I sat in the back of the car and waved at the psychologist as we left. Flashback, Jennifer, about another 6 months later at the home. I ran around the house like crazy, made sure it was clean, and just finished dumping the last of Daddy's alcohol down the kitchen drain. Daddy walked into the kitchen, saw me holding the empty bourbon bottle, and complained, Jennifer, what in the hell are you doing? I turned around, glared at him, stamped my foot, and answered, Daddy, you know Mother is coming home today, and because of that we can't have any alcohol in the house. He sputtered defensively. Yeah, but I meant to take that to work like the others. I laughed and answered, well, you're too late now because I fed it to the rats in the sewer. He shook his head and said, that was much too good for the rats. But he smiled and continued, so are you ready to go get Evelyn? I smiled and answered, give me a minute to change clothes and put on some makeup. I ran into my room, put on a dress. Hey, it was a special day. Put on a little makeup and ran back downstairs. Daddy took one look at me, laughed and asked, didn't you forget something? I smiled, thought a bit, and answered, I can't think of anything. He pointed to my feet. I looked down and realized with horror that I still had on my slippers. I giggled and answered, thanks, you're right. I dashed back to my room, put on some shoes, came back downstairs, and we went to the hospital and picked up Mother. Mother told me how beautiful I looked. I wanted to warn her not to get too used to me wearing dresses, but I didn't want to fight today. We got in the car, and on the way home I realized that Mother had changed. Flashback, Ben, Jack, and Masha. About another 6 months later on the flight back to America. I wasn't happy at all. We were supposed to stay in Russia for another 6 months, but the general recalled us early for some sort of super secret special mission. A hell of a lot of things went on during the past 6 months, but not enough of the things that I wanted to happen had happened. Oh, Jack and Masha had what appeared to be a great life together, which almost made me jealous while Tatiana and I were just getting comfortable with each other again. She cried like crazy when the orders came through. I thought about asking her to come with me until I remembered how hard it was for Jack to get permission from Masha to come to America. She did give me a couple of great parting gifts. No, I don't mean sex this time. First, she introduced me to the Orthodox religion, and unlike other religions, it made a hell of a lot of sense to me. We went to church every Sunday, and I even sang in the great choirs. Right before we left, I became Orthodox. You might ask how I could do what I do and still be Orthodox? Well, the Spetsnaz team sure didn't seem to have problems. Hell, we even had an Orthodox priest on the team who held services every Sunday. It didn't bother them, so I figured I wouldn't let it bother me. Tatiana and I also took a week off and traveled to the little town, 150,000 people, in Siberia she was from. It was great since I got to meet her family, but of course had to deal with the hero worship again. Tatiana was a hell of a woman, and in another time or another place I might have asked her to marry me, which was the only way I could have brought her to America. Things had certainly changed in my life during the time in Russia, but not as much as they did for Jack. I was lucky and got one of the normal seats that Jack and I liked on the flight, in the back of the plane. I smiled as I watched Jack and Masha. I couldn't believe how hard it had been to get a visa for Masha. Hell, I had thought that when we got married, she would just automatically get American citizenship. Boy, was I ever wrong. If it wasn't for some strings the general pulled, Masha wouldn't have gotten a visa at all, and I would have had to leave her in Moscow. Even though we were married, it would have normally taken at least a year to get the visa. When I found that out at the U.S. Embassy, I almost went ballistic and kicked the shit out of the pencil pusher who laughed at us. Luckily, Ben was there and calmed me down. He called the general and talked to his Russian colonel friend, told them what the problems were, and they pulled some strings, and we had a visa for her. I still wasn't totally happy because it was restrictive as hell. Shit, she couldn't travel out of the country and couldn't be a citizen for 2 years. Damn pencil dick pencil pushers. I assumed that we would take the back row of the airplane like Ben and I preferred, but Masha told me she didn't like the back because she could smell the toilets. Hell, they never bothered me. She was already stressed about the visa situation and having to pack all her clothes. Thank God the airlines gave soldiers a free ride on how much luggage we could haul, otherwise I would have had to ask Ben for a loan to pay all the extra baggage fees for the 8 large suitcases. I tried to get Masha to cut down some on her clothes, but Ben ruined it when he told her the airlines would let us bring as much as we wanted. Then the scumsucker even bought all the extra suitcases. Hell, it took all 3 of our carry-ons, Masha, Ben and I. But we even hauled her Lomonosov china set with us. I had no idea where in the hell we were going to put everything, let alone where we were going to live. But Masha was both concerned and happy at the same time. I almost forgot to mention, she had a hell of a fight at her work before we left. I was very concerned and could not let my husband Jack know about it. I had a huge fight with my superiors at work because I would not give them any information about Jack or Ben and told them I was finished working for them. They threatened to retaliate and terminate me. However, I showed them the incriminating information I had on all of them and informed them if anything happened to me, Jack or Ben, the information would be released to all the international news agencies. They were not happy and countered with an arrangement where I could be called upon occasionally to perform some tasks in exchange for their continued support. This was what Americans called a win-win situation, so I jumped at the opportunity. It was such a struggle for us to get the paperwork for me to come to America. I was very worried I would have to stay in Russia while Jack left me. Once again, Ben came through and negotiated a solution for us. Talking about Ben, I had hoped he would marry Tatiana, but their relationship was still a big mess from everything which happened, and he never became comfortable enough to ask her. Secretly, she told me that she would have said no anyway. Jack and I had a huge fight about what I wanted to bring to America. He wanted me to bring almost nothing, and I wanted to bring everything. Ben informed me of the no luggage restrictions policy, and I won. However, I was sure something was wrong with Jack's attitude concerning me winning this conflict. We were finally on our way. The fasten seatbelt sign was turned off, and Jack said, "Masha, I'm going to check on Ben." I answered, "Good. I'm going to the bathroom, then I want to take a nap." Jack headed to the back of the airplane, and I headed to the front bathroom. I walked back to visit with Ben and ask him a question. He saw me, grinned and teased. "Looks like the old ball and chain one again." I knew he was referring to where I sat with Masha, so I swore, "Shit, Ben, you and the luggage snafu is a big part of my problem. What the hell were you thinking telling Masha there were no luggage restrictions and then buying her all the damn suitcases?" He smiled at me and put me in my place. "Jack, stop complaining and put yourself in her shoes. You've uprooted her from her home country, hauled her to a foreign country where you might not realize it yet, but the American women are going to hate her, and then you gave her shit about what she wanted to bring. Jack, what she brought wasn't just for her comfort, it was so she could make you a comfortable home. So get your head out of your butt and count yourself lucky she even came at all." Hell's bells, Ben was right on most things, and certainly about this. But I didn't understand one thing, so I asked, "What do you mean the American women are going to hate her? Why would they do that?" Ben sneered at me and explained, "Jack, I guess you don't understand shit about differences between foreign women and American women. The American women are going to hate her just for being Russian. They will never accept her. In fact, be prepared for them to call her many nasty names to her face and behind her back." I shook my head and asked, "Are you sure about this?" Ben nodded his head and answered, "Hell yes, I'm sure about this. I've seen it happen too many times." I looked in disbelief at Ben, then I said, "Shit, Ben, I don't have any idea where in the hell I'm going to put all the shit that Masha brought." Ben glared at me and countered, "First, Jack, stop calling it shit, or I will kick your butt. And second, I was thinking ahead and have once again covered your butt." Again, I didn't understand, so I asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" Ben shook his head and replied, "Shit, I wondered if Jack was getting senile. He didn't bother to find a place for him and Masha to live, but I rectified it." I answered, "Jack, I pulled some strings and you and Masha have a nice as hell house close to the base, so you can set up house." Jack gave me a stupid look and replied, "Shit, why didn't I think of that?" I laughed like crazy and teased, "Probably because you were too busy getting it from Masha." Then I added, "Your bride is back. I would suggest you go to her, because she is worried." I watched as Jack left and knew that things would never be the same. Then I remembered back to my nightmare and realized something I should have known immediately. Shit, it was probably a premonition. Present, Jens, and others, many months later at the cabin. So many things have happened these last few months it's hard to remember them all, but since I am the leader of this ragtag group of misfits, I will try. First, and most disappointing, we never did find Ben. Heck, we never even came close to finding Ben. It was like he fell off the face of the earth. Next, I got Stacy out of our hair by hacking into her satellite system and telling it Ben and his friend headed away from the Continental Divide Trail, diverted over the mountains, and went toward California. I laughed my butt off because she fell for it hook, line, and sinker and was now going to California. I even had the system show me where she was, hacked into it on a daily basis, and moved Ben and the woman he was with even further away. Good riddance to bad rubbish. The cabin was finished, and we moved back inside just in time for Masha to have her baby girl, which she named Victoria. OMG. She was so cute and made me wish that Ben and I could have children. I now have a plan for that if I ever catch up to Ben. Ivan was a fantastic big brother to her. He loved to hold her and sing to her in Russian. I almost forgot, and this is interesting, his pictures of Ben and the wolf lady went back to looking like a child's stick drawing. And the pictures he had already drawn that looked so realistic somehow disappeared. Both Sarika and Yasmin were back at the cabin, as much as I disliked it. I couldn't bring it in my heart to send them away, not after Ben had saved both of them. Sarika wasn't bad since she worked out like crazy and had taken an interest in the bow lessons that Todd was teaching. On the other hand, Yasmin sat in her room, listless most days. Something that she wouldn't talk about happened to her in Denver. I didn't spend much time with them, so I don't know more. Only one of the Prim Reapers, my nickname for Mira and Ira, was here, and thank God it was Ira, the one who wasn't obsessed with Ben. I could tell Ira was head over heels in love with Todd, but he seemed immune to all her advances. As I mentioned before, Todd is teaching a bow class which Ira, Zarika, and Alexi are taking. That reminds me, Alexi lost a bow contest to the new girl who showed up named Safia, where they came up with these crazy names I will never know, and had to serve her breakfast in bed for a month. I'm not so sure that he served her only breakfast, and not something else. Safia and Mira left, thank God, for some mission that Mira had to finish but which I wasn't privy to. With the cabin finished, Liz and Bernie started to plan their wedding. The lucky dogs. I had hoped that my wedding to Ben would have been the first wedding at the cabin. An untold number of teams were scouring the country for the scumsucker Mike, including Daddy and Hammer. But like us looking for Ben, they didn't have any luck finding him. It was tempting to have my teams look for the scumsucker after what he did to me and everyone else. But my focus was finding Ben and finding him as soon as possible. Daddy was still embracing the Scottish side of our family, and to indulge him, I sometimes wore a skirt in our family's plaid. I made the mistake of calling it a kilt only once, and was promptly informed that on women it was a skirt. Tom, Inga, and the SIF's team with the medical plane left on a mission to find Megan, the drug lord and mother, whom Megan broke out of the hospital. I hadn't heard anything at all from them, so I guess they were having about as much luck finding their quarry as we were in finding Ben. Jack complained like hell when I let the SIF's command center leave until he saw the cabin's hidden command center in the basement. It was like the SIF's command center on steroids, plus I had a crack team managing it. The group was led by Gretchen from the computer store. Remember her from Walker? Samantha was away doing news stories wherever there was news. Linus was still running our field team looking for Ben, while Maria was here working as my girl Friday. I forgot to mention, she stopped drinking because she was pregnant. Geez, I almost forgot the most important person, Mabel. She cooked our excellent gourmet meals every day. It was all I could do to keep from getting fat. I complete morning PT and yoga with the team that is here. It is funny as hell watching Maria trying to perform some of the asanas, yoga poses. She wasn't skinny before she got pregnant, and now, well, she was big, really big. I shower, grab a quick breakfast, and head to the hidden command center. I walk into the basement storage room, move up to the electrical panel, open it, and flip off a certain series of circuit breakers. The wall slides away. I walk into the command center and smile, because everyone is already hard at work. Gretchen looks up, smiles at me, holds up a piece of paper, and says, "Jennifer, you might want to look at this. It's a listing of campsite reservations for Glacier National Park. There's one really strange-sounding name on it. There have been so many false alarms that I didn't even bother heading in her direction. Instead, I just ask, what's so strange about the name Gretchen? She smiles at me and answers, well, it sounds sort of Russian, but I'm not sure and hoped you would check it. Also, he rented a whole campground on top of a mountain just for himself. I wave my hand and comment, sounds like someone with more money than brains, but tell me the name anyway. My heart practically stops when she answers. The dude's name is Erast Petrovich Vanderin. I dash beside her and demand, let me see that report. She hands it to me. I read it, but can't believe it, and announce, Erast Petrovich Vanderin, we have finally caught you. Gretchen asks, is this Ben, and if so, how do you know this is Ben? And why would he choose to show up now and in all places, Glacier National Park? I hug the report to my chest because it's the first news of Ben since he left the cabin and answer, I am sure it is Ben. Erast Petrovich Vanderin is a fictional character in a series of books written by Boris Akunin, which Ben loves. As to why he suddenly appeared in Glacier National Park, I have no frickin' idea. Perhaps he's doing this to tease me right before he enters Canada. Gretchen gives me additional information. Jennifer, he's rented the campground for a full week, so I don't think he's planning on leaving anytime soon. I reach over, slam my fist down on the klaxon button, and yell over the sound of the horn, "This is not a drill. We have finally found Ben." Present, Ben, many months later at Glacier National Park. Destiny and I are sitting on a couple of rocks, enjoying the sunshine. It's been a long, cold winter traversing the Continental Divide Trail. Many had said our trek was impossible in the winter. I grin at her, and she says, "Ben, there were times I thought we would have given up." I continue the grin and answer, "Whatever I do, I never give up. All someone can do once they give up is bitch, and I've known some great beachers in my time. With some it's a passion, with others an art, but it's one thing I will never become." Destiny smiles her peculiar smile, the one that reminds me of the wind blowing in a grove of aspen trees, and asks, "Well, Ben, we've reached the end of our journey together, and it's my time to leave. Have you decided yet?" I knew this time was coming, and I really dreaded it. But I had learned all there was to learn from Destiny, and my life needed to take a new turn, or perhaps return to a road once traveled and too quickly abandoned. I hug Destiny, which I can tell surprises her by the way she pulls back, and apologize. "Destiny, I've been a shithead on this trip, and I owe you more apologies than I could ever find the time to give. You have been correct the entire time. You are not only a shaman, you are a very powerful and incredibly patient shaman." She continues the smile. "Even though there are no trees, I swear I hear the aspen leaves quake," and answers, "And now, Ben, I must leave because it is your turn. Remember all I have taught you, and do not forget your destiny." I chuckle and interrupt her play on words and say, "How in the world could I ever forget you?" She continues, "Ben, you know what I mean. She will be coming for you, and she has plans." I nod my head and answer, "Yes, and I am finally ready for her and her plans." Destiny adds, "What about your missions?" I clasp my hands in front of me and answer, "I remember both my missions, even though I have no idea how I will accomplish one of them." She begins to fade and asks, "Is there anything else you desire before I leave?" I grab her hand and answer, "I want to see your animal form." She shakes her hand loose from mine and says, "As you wish." Then she changes first into the wolf I saw in the clearing where she was going to fight Anastasia the fox and the mangy dog. Then I swear she smiles when she changes into the wolf I saw so many years ago in Russia. Now that was a hell of a shock. I blink my eyes, and then she's gone, but I know she will never really be gone because she's always been with me. You see, she was grandfather's gift to me. Now I need to prepare myself for what's coming. I take a short hike to clear my mind, come back to camp, start a small campfire in a cooking pit, and begin to burn sage on it to cleanse myself. Tonight I will fast and abstain from food. I will only drink water. I wake up early the next morning to the sound of my pots and pans being disturbed, so I grab the pistol I keep under my pillow, open up the door of the tent, and yell at the squirrels that woke me up. They take off like their tails are on fire, so I decide to get up. I crawl out of the tent, head over to the cook stove, fire it up, and put some water on to boil for coffee. I enjoy the hell out of my coffee while admiring the mountain peaks that encompass me. With my missions, I'm not sure when, or if, I will ever be back to Glacier National Park, so I decide to take today and explore. I close up the tent, load up a pack, and head off for a long hike. This is different than traveling on the Continental Divide Trail, because I don't have to worry about how far I've traveled or how far I have to go. I have the time to stop, listen to the sounds of nature around me, and inhale the pine-scented air. I arrive back in the camp very satisfied, and also very late in the day. Once again, I start the campfire and perform the cleansing ritual. I abstain from food, but indulge myself with copious amounts of water. I yawn and I am amazed at how sleepy I am. It must be from the fasting. I don't have anything else to do, so I put out the fire, crawl into the tent, and immediately fall asleep. During the night, I have an incredible dream. I dream that Jens is here in the tent with me. It's interrupted once again in the morning by something with my pots and pans. I open up my eyes and realize it's much later than I normally sleep. I rise, reach my hand under the pillow for my pistol, but it's not there. Then I'm shocked when I hear from outside the tent, "Erast frickin' Fanderin, I am tired of chasing your butt all over America. Get the hell out of that tent right now." My pistol is missing as I knew it would be. I look and find my rifle is also missing. I reach down for my K-bar, but even it's gone. I smile because it's all happening. Then she laughs and says, "Present, Jens and others, at Glacier Park. Yippee skippy. This is so much fun. I finally caught Ben, and boy am I going to make him pay. First I made sure to remove all his weapons last night. I can tell from the way the tent's moving that he's looking for them, so I tell him, Ben, while you were sleeping last night, I took all your weapons. Now get out of that tent because I want to talk to you." I hear the zipper on the tent. Ben slides out of the tent, stumbles a little, looks at me and asks, "What in the hell did you do to me?" I grin at him and answer, "I drugged your water so I could disarm you last night. Now get your rear over here and eat this wonderful breakfast I made for us." He glares at me, yawns, rubs his face and asks, "You made breakfast for me?" I point to the picnic table and answer, "Yes, I did. I made pancakes, eggs, and bacon." Ben blinks a few times and continues, "Where the hell did the table and everything else come from?" I smile at him and answer, "I brought it so we could have a civilized breakfast and then talk about things. Now come and eat because your breakfast is getting cold." Ben stumbles over to the table and complains, "Damn, you didn't have to give me so much of whatever you gave me." I answer, "Stop complaining and eat. You will feel better after you have some food and coffee in your stomach." He sits down, begins to eat, looks up, smiles at me, and says, "Hey, this isn't half bad." I giggle and answer, "That would mean it was only half good, and I would certainly hope it is better than half good. Would you like some more coffee?" He holds up his mug. I top it off, and we continue to eat. Ben finishes, looks around, and asks, "What's to keep me from taking off?" I hold up the Remington 870 pump-action shotgun that was sitting in my lap and answer, "Because I, or one of my friends who I brought here, will shoot you." He glares at me and taunts, "I highly doubt you would kill me." I giggle and answer, "Of course not. But we would knock you on your butt. Our shotguns are loaded with Taser's rep rounds." Ben smiles at me and finally admits, "Okay, Jens, now that you've caught me, what do you want to do with me?" Finally, he got around to asking, so I answer, "Ben, I want what I've always wanted from you. I want you to keep your promise to marry me." He starts to open his mouth, and I interrupt, "Ben, don't give me that bullshit about not being able to give me children. All I have ever really wanted is you." He looks at me and then gives me an answer I didn't expect, and if I say no? Damn, I never thought he would say that. I fumble for an answer, look at Ben's pistol setting on the picnic table seat beside me, and make a decision. I pick up the pistol, cock it, put it up to my head, and threaten, "Ben, I really don't want to live without you. No, I can't live without you. Do you recognize this pistol?" Ben strangely grins at me and answers, "Yes. It's mine, and you stole it from under my pillow." I smile at Ben and reply, "That's right, it's your 10mm. Now what's your decision? Keep your promise to me, or..." Ben grins at me, folds his arm defiantly across his chest, and shocks me when he answers, "Jens, I will not be forced to marry you. So if the alternative is killing yourself, I can't keep you from doing it." Shit. I hadn't counted on this, but I've committed myself, and it's too late to back down. I can only hope that Ben will stop me before I... Ben continues to grin as I slowly begin to squeeze the trigger. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.